the opener, all you're doing is finding what number plus the other number minus the other number gets you to 0. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. 10 minus 10 is 0. 5 plus negative 5 is 0. 12 minus 12 is 0. Okay, not much to it, right? And what's nice about this, right, is all we're trying to figure out is what's the opposite number from the first one we were given, right? We're just changing the sign, plus or minus. That's all it is, right? Think about one number is added to 0. Pretty simple. And that's what we're going to work to do as we solve equations. So this just brings up an important property. It's called the additive inverse property of addition. All it's saying is that if we have one number plus the opposite sign of that same number, that gets us to 0. 5 plus negative 5 is 0. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. 5 minus 5 is 0. So when we are solving equations, we are going to work to get that to happen. Now, this is where it's going to be different than where some of you have done with equations previously, to where a lot of you can probably just already figure this out right off from the bat. Okay, you can probably say, hey, 9 plus 3 is 12. That means x is 3. Some of you know you need to subtract 9, and you get your answer to be 3, which is great. What we're going to work to do every single time is we're going to get one side to equal 0. Okay, and that's what I'm going to be picky about. We're going to do this every time we solve. It is one more step most of the time. But again, these are building good math habits that we'll use not only in this unit, but in further. It's really important when we get to quadratics, but other units in algebra as well. Now, what we're going to do when we're solving and we want to get one side to be equal to 0, we are undoing operations. That's essentially what solving equations, what we're working to do. We're going to undo operations with the end goal of trying to get x by itself. So I'm going to get the right side to be 0, which I can do by subtracting 12. Now, I drew this line. That's just the line representing the equal sign. And so I want to subtract 12 onto both sides of that equal sign. So I'm going to subtract 12 on the right side of the equal sign and subtract 12 from the left side. Now, when we do this, we want to subtract it from its similar term, meaning I can't do x minus 12, right? Those aren't like terms. I can do 9 minus 12. Numbers are like terms, where 9 minus 12 is equal to negative 3. And I have plus x, and it equals 0. And now this is turned into exactly what your opener was. Negative 3 plus what is 0. And that would be 3, okay, which we would eventually get there by just adding 3. Okay, so we're going to always work to get the right side to be 0, and then we can just use that same property we used in the opener. Now, if you look ahead at 6 and 7, we got fractions and decimals. We need calculators, friends. Go check out a calculator. Try to get 2 per group. 2 per group. Keep recording. So with these fractions, we're going to get the right side to be 0. So we're going to add 2/3 to both sides. Now, we're not going to spend the time talking about how to add or subtract fractions. We're just going to let the calculator do this work for us right now. And whatever your calculator tells you is what I want your answer to be. So if your calculator converts it into a decimal, write your answer as a decimal. If your calculator leaves it as a fraction, leave it as a fraction. So right now I'm going to go 3/4. And I'm going to add 2/3. Now notice how I'm putting everything in here. I've got parentheses around the fractions. The fractions are division problems. Okay, some calculators can actually do the full fraction. But for this one, I have to do it as 3 divided by 4 plus 2 divided by 3. My calculator says that it's 1.41666666. We'll just go ahead and do like 3 decimal places. Jimmy, we got new seats. I think you're over back there with Ty and David and Christopher. So I'm going to say that I have x plus 1.416. We'll do 3 decimal places, and that equals 0. Yeah, I guess we should say 7. That's a good point. Let's rewrite that. X plus 1.417 equals 0. And so now, again, if we use that additive inverse property, we know that x just needs to be the opposite from what we just got. So x equals negative 1.417. Again, if your calculator kept things as a fraction, write your answer as a fraction. Whatever your calculator tells you is how I want you to do it. All right, let's do one more, and then I'm going to have you all do 8, 9, and 10 on your own. And so starting with 7, we're first going to get the right side to be 0, so I'm going to subtract 7.1. So in my calculator, I need to do negative 5.7 minus 7.1. Remember that most calculators have a different button for making numbers negative and for subtraction. So I need to press the negative button first, which is right next to the dot button or the decimal button. So I'm going to negative 5.7 and then minus 7.1. And that gives me negative 12.8 plus x. Now it equals 0. And so x needs to be the additive inverse of negative 12.8, just positive 12.8. Let's always put boxes around answers too. I should have been doing that early on, just so I know real clearly what answer you're trying to get to. Okay, in your groups, complete 8, 9, and 10. And then we'll move on to the back side. So you should have gotten for number 8, x equals negative 4. For number 9, x equals 3. And for number 10, x equals negative 10. Once you have this written down, go ahead and flip it over. And we're going to start on the next grouping or group of problems. And we'll probably get rid of some of these example problems. So I'm going to just do this. Okay. So I'll do 11 and 12, and then we'll figure out which ones we'll get rid of from there. All right, so to start 11, idea is the exact same. But now our x is negative, so we're going to have to think about subtraction a little bit. And actually, we got some x's flipped on the other side, so these are a little bit different, I guess. So first, I'm going to minus 2 to get one side to be 0, so 11 minus x equals 0. Now, this is where I like us thinking about or using that additive inverse property and just thinking about 11 minus what is 0. That would be just 11. Right? 11 minus 11 is 0. Now, if we went ahead and subtracted 11, then we'd be solving for a negative x. And we'll figure out how to deal with that negative x in one of our future lessons. And so for now, we're just going to continue to use the additive inverse property. So let's do 14 just to deal with having the x on the other side. Now we're going to get our left side to be 0. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So that gets the left side to be 0. Then negative 5 minus 6 is negative 11 plus x. And so now I'm thinking about a negative 11 plus what is 0. And that'd be positive 11. So let's do, I'm okay with us giving it 12. And 13. Let's just do 15 and 16 and we'll move on to the next two. I'll give you 2 minutes. Do 15 and 16. $15, we're adding 1 to both sides, giving us 0 is equal to x plus 4. And thus, x needs to equal negative 4 for that to be 0. 16, add 1 to both sides. So I get 0 is equal to 9 minus x, and thus x needs to be 9. Okay, last thing, and then we'll get you some homework time. Working with double signs. We talked about this in our first unit. We're going to add one step to this. That if we have double signs, we're going to simplify them. So we're going to figure out, are we actually adding or subtracting? So x minus a negative 6 really means that we're adding 6. And then from here, I'll go ahead and start my solving process where I get one side to be 0. So minus 5, giving me x plus 1 equals 0. And thus, x needs to equal negative 1. X plus a negative 5. We have one negative there, so that actually is still subtraction. So that's still x minus 5 equals 10. And thus, we need to minus 10 to get one side to be 0. So I get x minus 15 equals 0, which means x needs to be 15. Okay, we're going to get rid of some of the problems that you need to work on, at least for the notes. So let's get rid of 19 and 22. We'll do 4 more. Okay, 17, 18, 20, and 21. Make sure you're dealing with your double signs. Figure out what you're going to do with the fraction and decimals. That's why you have calculators. If you don't have a calculator, have somebody in your group pressing buttons and sharing out what they get. We'll do 4 minutes here. Once you finish with these, you can start homework. All right, for everyone watching online, you can go ahead and check your work here on 17, 18, 20, and 21. Not much is different. Make sure we're dealing with those double signs just to simplify the process. Again, with the fractions, type them in as division problems with parentheses. That part's really important. You should end with x being negative 0.55 with a fraction problem. The decimals, they actually go away, so you end up getting just negative 13. All right, have a great day.